Every incarnation of The Undertaker explained in 13 minutes. Before he ruled the ring, The Undertaker was born in Vince McMahon's office. In 1990, Mark Calloway, rejected by WCW, was transformed into wrestling's most terrifying force, with Paul Bearer by his side. Western Mortician. When The Undertaker made his WWF debut at Survivor Series 1990, he wasn't alone. He was brought to the ring by the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase and introduced as the latest client of manager Brother Love. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, wearing a black trench coat, wide-brimmed hat, and gray gloves, he looked like a mortician ripped straight from an old Western. His face was painted pale, his movements slow and deliberate, and his eyes rolled back in his head like something not entirely human. Fans quickly learned that he was more than just an intimidating presence. His in-ring style was almost unnerving. He no-sold punches, sat up after taking big moves, and finished opponents with the devastating tombstone piledriver. In his first year, he entered feuds with Jake the Snake Roberts and the Ultimate Warrior, even locking Warrior in a casket during one infamous segment. And when Paul Bearer replaced Brother Love as his manager in 1991, bringing with him the iconic urn that supposedly fueled Undertaker's power, the character became even more chilling. Phantom Mask. In late 1995, The Undertaker's aura took a surprising turn, and it all started with a real injury. During a match with Mabel, he suffered a legit broken orbital bone, which could have been career-ending. Backstage, there were serious worries about whether he'd be able to keep working while recovering. Vince McMahon wanted him on TV, so the creative team rushed to design a mask that could protect his face while turning the injury into part of the character. Locker room stories from this era paint The Undertaker as someone who refused to take time off, even when he probably should have, because he didn't want to lose momentum in his feuds with King Mabel and Bret Hart. Instead of keeping him off TV, WWF leaned into it. Undertaker returned at Survivor Series wearing a custom black protective mask that made him look like a cross between a medieval executioner and the Phantom of the Opera. It was unsettling in the best way. Even though the mask was practical, it added a new layer to his mystique. This was a man who could be hurt but still kept coming back, more dangerous than before. Through this period, he clashed with King Mabel, Yokozuna, and Bret Hart, all while slowly shifting from being a silent, terrifying heel to a crowd-favorite anti-hero. The mask didn't last forever. He eventually ditched it in early '96, but it showed how even an injury could become part of his evolving legend. Lord of Darkness. By 1996, The Undertaker wasn't just a supernatural wrestler anymore. He was becoming a full-blown gothic cult leader. This was the Lord of Darkness era, and it's when his storylines took a sharp turn into horror movie territory. Managed by Paul Bearer, his pale-faced, urn-carrying partner in creepiness, Undertaker embraced the dark arts fully, speaking in riddles, summoning lightning, and staging bizarre rituals in the ring. Feuds got more personal too. His battles with Mankind were pure chaos. We're talking boiler room brawls, buried alive matches, and mind games that pushed WWF into more violent, edgy territory. This was also the stretch where he started building the ministry that would come later, recruiting allies and making enemies with almost everyone on the roster. Every week, his promos felt like some doomsday prophecy, and fans just couldn't get enough of it. This wasn't just a character. This was The Undertaker becoming mythology. Ministry of Darkness. By 1999, The Undertaker had evolved into something even darker. The Ministry of Darkness. This wasn't just an intimidating persona anymore. It was a straight-up cult, complete with hooded followers, fiery crucifixes, and rituals that blurred the line between wrestling storyline and actual occult ceremony. Still under the watch of Paul Bearer, he formed a faction that terrorized the WWF roster. They kidnapped wrestlers, tied people to giant crosses, and sacrificed opponents in the middle of the ring. His feud with Vince McMahon hit a fever pitch during this time, with the infamous higher power reveal becoming one of the most talked about swerves in wrestling history. He was also in heated storylines with Steve Austin, The Rock, and Mankind, making Raw feel like a horror action series every Monday night. It was controversial, over the top, and completely unforgettable. The Ministry era cemented him not just as a top guy, but as the beating, undead heart of WWF's Attitude Era chaos. The Ministry Era wasn't just about shock value. It was a calculated attempt by Vince to pull WWF ahead in the Monday Night Wars. Off camera, Calaway was leading younger talent through some of the edgiest storylines of the Attitude Era. His backstage friendship with guys like Bradshaw and Ron Simmons meant they could fully commit to the wild cult leader aesthetic, knowing the locker room had his back. One lesser-known fact is that Calaway personally pitched the infamous crucifixion angles to Vince, believing it would cement The Undertaker as the most feared villain on TV. American Badass. In 2000, The Undertaker pulled off one of the boldest moves in wrestling history. He killed the Deadman and rolled in as the American Badass. Gone were the slow, ominous walks and funeral gongs. Now, you'd hear a revving Harley, Kid Rock's American Badass blasting, and then here he came, in sunglasses, leather, and denim, riding straight down the ramp like a biker outlaw who just decided to crash Monday Night Raw. He talked more, fought dirtier, and was just as dangerous, but in a very human way. This version of Taker went toe-to-toe with Kurt Angle, Triple H, and Stone Cold, and he had a brutal feud with Brock Lesnar that proved he could still hang with the new generation. When he rolled to the ring on a motorcycle at Judgment Day 2000, it wasn't just a gimmick shift. It was Calaway finally blending his real-life persona with his in-ring character. Away from the cameras, he was already known for riding Harleys and hanging with the boys after shows. Vince McMahon was initially hesitant to drop the supernatural elements completely, but Calaway argued that the audience had grown too smart to believe in pure mysticism in the Attitude Era. Some fans were shocked. Others loved it, but one thing was certain. It kept The Undertaker fresh at a time when the Deadman act might have gone stale. It was a gamble, and he made it work. And if you're loving getting this kind of behind-the-scenes look at wrestling history, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. We've got plenty more untold stories coming your way. Big Evil? By 2001, the American Badass took a darker turn, and fans started calling him Big Evil. Same biker look, but now he was a ruthless enforcer who didn't care if the crowd cheered or booed. He'd choke you out, powerbomb you through the mat, and then stare down the camera just to send a message. His famous line, "I'm gonna make you famous," wasn't just a catchphrase, it was a threat. If you were new to WWE, getting in the ring with Big Evil meant you were either getting destroyed or sent home in pieces. He held the WWE Undisputed Championship during this run and had one of the most talked-about feuds of the era with Jeff Hardy, where he pushed the high flyer to his absolute limit in a ladder match that made Hardy a star. This was Taker at his most human. No supernatural gimmicks, just raw intimidation, pure aggression, and the aura of a man who was the locker room judge, jury, and executioner. Big Evil was basically the heel version of the American Badass, but with even more of Calaway's real personality bleeding through. He was more outspoken backstage during this era, mentoring rookies like John Cena while also protecting the integrity of the product. There's a famous locker room story about how Calaway confronted a young wrestler for not shaking hands when entering the room, a big sign of disrespect in wrestling culture. This was also the period when he had heated real-life tensions with Brock Lesnar, which later got worked into storylines. Resurrected Deadman. WrestleMania 20 in 2004 felt like a ghost story coming to life. The lights went out, the gong hit, and Paul Bearer's chilling voice echoed through Madison Square Garden. Just like that, The Undertaker had returned to his Deadman roots. Gone was the biker. In his place was the slow, ominous walk, the hat, the coat, and the supernatural presence that first terrified fans back in the 90s. But this wasn't the same Deadman. This was a sharper, more dangerous version who mixed his eerie theatrics with the real-world toughness he'd shown as Big Evil. He ran through legends like Randy Orton, Batista, and Edge, defending his streak year after year. This era also cemented his reputation as Mr. WrestleMania in his own right, with classic matches against Shawn Michaels and Triple H that fans still call some of the best in wrestling history. The return of the Deadman at WrestleMania twice wasn't just a nostalgic moment. It was Vince McMahon and The Undertaker listening to fans who had been chanting for the return of the old-school version. Backstage, the entrance was treated like a state secret, with rehearsals done in private so nobody could spoil the moment. Calloway blended his early slow-moving monster with the more realistic fighting style he'd developed in the American Badass era, creating a hybrid that could work with modern wrestlers like Randy Orton and Batista. The magic was back, but now it came with a decade of battle scars, and that made it even more intimidating. Final act. By the late 2010s, it was clear The Undertaker's career was winding down, but the man refused to just fade away. Every appearance felt like an event. Every match carried the weight of 30 years of battles. He faced Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 33 in what many thought would be his last ride, leaving his hat, gloves, and coat in the ring in an emotional farewell. But, like all legends, he wasn't quite done yet. He came back for one more cinematic masterpiece, the Boneyard match against AJ Styles at WrestleMania 36. It was part horror movie, part action scene, and a perfect mix of all his personas. The Deadman, the biker, the brawler rolled into one. When the match ended, it felt like the curtain had truly fallen. Later that year, at Survivor Series 2020, exactly 30 years after his debut, The Undertaker officially said goodbye. No grand brawl, no twist ending, just one last walk, a final gong, and darkness. It wasn't just the end of a career, it was the end of an era. The Undertaker's legacy isn't just about championships or storylines. It's about how he adapted, evolved, and kept fans believing in the magic of wrestling for 3 straight decades. From the graveyard to the open road, from cult leader to locker room general, he proved that legends aren't born. They're built, one era at a time. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Deadman's incredible journey, hit that like button, subscribe for more wrestling history, and let us know in the comments which wrestler's story you want us to cover next.